Okay, so today we're going to talk about the landing page slash layout builder. There are two pieces of content types that use layout builder. Our educational program pages, which we are providing a drop-down list that is pulled from my data of publicly available programs, and then our landing page. Landing pages are just like pages, they just feature layout builder. So again, gives you a lot more customization and options for how your page layout is. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a new landing page. I am using Blackhawk County's site. They're currently on our preview server, so I'll delete this when I'm done. But both the landing page and the educational program pages look very bare when you first add one. The landing page just has a title field, and the educational program pages just have that drop down option. It doesn't look like you can actually add content, but that's because we're using Layout Builder, so the functionality is just a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a test page here so that we can play around. And once I hit save, you'll notice that instead of that edit button, there's a layout option, a layout tab now, and that is what you'll use for anything utilizing Layout Builder. So Layout Builder is a drag and drop interface. It's built off of sections and blocks. So sections are basically the rows of content, and you can add multiple different configurations for those rows or sections. And then blocks are the actual content within the section. So when we choose to add a row, we'll import a template from the section library. And this allows you to choose from 5 different layouts. There's a 1-column layout that is, of course, just the full column width of that content. There's a 2-column layout that splits that up into 2 columns. A 3-column layout, again, splits the content area up into 3 different columns. And then there's a left column template, which allows you to put, an image or text or something onto the left-hand side, and then align that with content on the right-hand side. And then, of course, a right column template, which is just the exact opposite. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a 2-column layout. And as you'll notice, we now have some blue areas that say add block. And this is where we're going to add our content. But before we get into that, I want to talk about all of the different configuration options for those section layouts. So now that I've added this 2-column section, there's a configure 2-column layout link off to the left-hand side and above that section. So if I click on that, there is a tray that pulls out on the right-hand side. I'll be completely frank, this was something we intended to hide originally. We just hadn't gotten around to hiding it. But Linn County really made use of configuring their column layouts and to really customize their pages. So we ended up deciding to leave it. So there's lots of different options over here on this settings tray, and that's what we're going to go over today. All of the different things that you can do to configure those section layouts in your layout builder page. And then the next webinar that we do, we'll talk about adding actual content or blocks to the layout library. Okay, so when you have a multi-column layout that you've added, you're going to have the ability to change some of those grid properties. So when I click on that, we're just going to go through each one of these. I'm going to tell you which ones I use the most. I might skip a few just because I've not used them, but that doesn't mean that you can't if you have a use case. So the first one is the column gap. So you'll notice that as those 2 blocks were added, those 2 blue squares for my content, there is a noticeable gap between those 2 columns. And in most situations, you would want that gap so that there's some sort of separation between your content. But there are instances where you might not. One of the places that I remove the column gap is on the About page. Where it has the map of Iowa with your county highlighted, and then just some contact information and the mission statement. So you can choose to either make the column gap smaller, larger, you can leave it where it's at, or you can move it to none. And just froze up. Or quite possible my keypad just died. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Okay, I'm gonna open up my other computer so I have a mouse pad. Okay, so technical difficulties. Okay, so when I change that grid property to column gap none and update, you'll notice that any column gap that I had in between those two blocks was removed. So that's basically what it does. It just changes that gap in between. There's also a row gap option, and this would be for the row above or below the section that I've added. So this has a default option, but you can change it to increase or decrease that gap in between the content from each row. I'm going to go ahead and just skip the column breakpoint. Not sure that you will ever need this. The default option should be sufficient. The column width is also something that I use quite frequently. With the blocks that this column layout added, obviously they're 50-50. So each block of content is taking up the same amount of space. But there's a lot of times where I know that I have more content on one side and just a small list on the other, and I might want to change the width of these blocks. So that's what the column width would be for. There are, as you can see, several different options here, and you can change it so that one column is bigger than the other. I'll just save this so you can see. So obviously it changes the width of my blocks that I've got. And you can adjust that depending on the information that you have in it. There's also an alignment option. Again, you shouldn't need to use this, but this one is there if you need it. Another option is background, and this is what where Linn County has really taken the options available to them and really customized a lot of their pages. So you can upload a background image that will appear behind any content that you add on this section. We're actually using this on the home page of the current websites to just pull one up here so you can see. We'll pull up Linn County so you can see a few different ways that you can use this. Sorry. A few different ways that you can use this option. So uploading a background image, if you'll notice on the homepage of the new sites, we have this red banner with some images on it. That is a background image to this specific 2-column section. I'm going to go ahead and go to their About Us page, and they've also got a background image here at the top with, a button and some text on top of it. And they do this pretty frequently on most of their pages, just to add a little bit more customization, a little bit more of a visual appeal to their pages. You don't have to do this, but the option is there. There's also background image styles where you can change the size of that background image. You can also add color as opposed to just images. So there is some background color options. Again, we did not intend to leave this as configuration options you could change. So those background options, there's not very many of them currently, but I do anticipate that we'll be adding some additional options to that. You can also choose the positioning of the background image. You can change the size, and then like Linn County, keep forgetting that my mouse is not working. Like Linn County uploaded this image, it looks like they've got an overlay over the top of it to kind of darken it so that the text is showing up a little bit more. And there is a background overlay here so that you can actually dim the image and make the text stand out better. There's also margins, which is basically spacing outside of the block area. And then paddings is the other spacing option, and that is inside of the block area. So there's lots of different ways that you can add spacing either around, to the top, to the sides, to the bottom, whichever you choose. Between the margins and paddings options, you can adjust how much space is around each block of content. There's also container options, which is the actual content container. I've not had a need to use any of these, but the details there are very specific. So they tell you exactly what each thing will do, such as the height of the container. You can choose the height of the layout. It changes the minimum height of your layout. I wouldn't suggest doing this just for accessibility and responsiveness. But you can adjust things. The container size is the second option. It changes the maximum width of your layout. And then the content container, you choose the size of the container for the content of the layout. It's honestly would be most useful if you wanted a full width background, but contain your content in the middle. Again, some of these are going to have some weird reactions with responsive sizes. So anytime we're reducing the size of the website to fit into a tablet or a mobile device, there could be some issues if you use anything in that container area. So just use those with caution. And styles is not something you should have access to. And it's just so that we can add additional coding to help restrict things. So restrict as in make sure that nothing's running up against each other. So those are all of the configuration options for the section layouts. Like I said, everything is available in that import from library, and then you have so many customization options once you actually select a section template from this library. In addition to that, there is a way for you to save a template. So say you want all of your program pages to look the exact same way. You want a strip of content at the top, then 2 columns, then a single column. Like if you have a very specific use case where you want everything to look the same, you can actually build out a whole page. So continue to add your sections and content, and then you can add the template to a library. So this would only add it to your website, so you don't have to worry about anyone else having access to your templates or messing up anyone else's library. It's only going to add it to the template library on your own site. So this would be great if you have multiple people working on the site and you're trying really hard to maintain a consistent layout from each page to the next. You can build out your whole page, add the template to the library. It's gonna, you name it and everything, and it's gonna save it so that anyone logging into your site can see that template and reuse it on other pages. It does look like we still have 15 minutes, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and get into the blocks. Before I do that, does anyone have any questions on the layout so far?
Okay. Oh, now I'm connected again. No, I'm not.
You can go ahead and unmute your mic or chat if you'd like, if you have any questions. Okay, so I'm gonna add some blocks of content, and what I'm doing is I'm just building out a layout by adding additional sections real quick so that I can show you how to do this. So once I've got my section layouts added, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add a block because I want content in these sections. When you add a block, you'll see one option, create custom block. If you have one of our earlier sites, you might see some additional options right now. Those should be removed fairly soon so that you just have that custom block content. So once you get to this custom block content, there's going to be 4 different options of content that you can add. And each one has a description. So basic content is just your basic body field with all of the icons and ability that the content editor has. You would use this for your normal body content, text, images, videos, accordions, tables, anything like that would be used for your basic content type. Next is the content card. This is used to create content-based blocks with customizable headings. And I'm going to do an example of what that looks like. Human Sciences website is using that on the homepage. So you'll notice these blocks with the red border and label, and then content within those. Those are content cards. Basically, they're just a visual way to add additional content to a page. You get to put the label. You can use an icon if you wish. You don't have to. And then you put in your content. And they're just using this for bulleted lists, but because it's just basic content, you still have access to the entire content editor. So you could use accordions, tables, images, videos, documents, whatever you want can be placed into these content cards. The next option is the feed block. It is a way for you to configure and display content from extension blog feeds. So any extension blog that we're aware of that is branded appropriately for extension is in this list. And if you want to share, we'll just use the Science of Parenting as an example. The Science of Parenting has a blog, and if you wanted to include that blog feed on your site to enhance the content that you're providing, as well as not having to remember to update it or add content yourself, you can pull in a blog feed from the Science of Parenting blog. This all happens automatically. You get to select how many blogs it shows. Anytime a new blog is added on the Science of Parenting blog, it automatically gets fed into whatever sites are using that blog feed. So it's just a great way to use the resources we have available within Extension, increase the amount of content on your site without adding additional work for you. And then the 4th option is the image card. This is used to create image-based cards with customizable labels. So it's a lot like the content cards, except instead of it focusing on content, it focuses on images. And we have this used currently. It's used in several places, but the one place I always show everyone is the e-accessibility page on my extension. You'll see that we have images. We've chosen the color red here. We have a label, and these cards each link to additional pages. You do not have to use them as a placeholder to link something, but you certainly can link them elsewhere. Again, it's just a great way to add visual content and a little bit of styling options as well. Now, both the Human Sciences and the e-accessibility page used red for their cards, but you actually do have a drop-down option so you can select different colors. They all come from the brand marketing color palette. There's 4-H green, red, blue, and so on. So lots of different options, so you can select what color those are. They just both happen to be using red. I'd love to get into this more, but I don't want to get into it and be right in the middle of discussing it. So we've talked about sections and what those are. We've talked about the different block options. And before I start actually adding blocks and going through how to use them, I think I'm going to end this for today. And when we come back after the first of the year for our next recorded webinar, we'll actually work through adding those blocks to Layout Builder and learn how to edit them once they've been placed, remove them, or move them around within the section. So does anyone have any questions?